Special Forces soldiers, fully armed with loaded weapons, were escorting a short and thin old lady. The soldier originally wanted to urge the old lady to hurry up, but in the next second, even though the soldier was startled, he didn't take it too seriously at the time. After all, the old lady was a priestess of an indigenous jungle tribe. It wasn't unusual for her to have some ruthless methods, but before long, the soldier's body began to show abnormalities: nausea, vomiting, general weakness, and blurred vision. Gradually, his eyes turned blood red. In the end, the soldier stumbled dazedly into the cafeteria. And all of this was inseparable from a mission. A few days earlier, a Special Forces team had suddenly received an order to be dispatched to the depths of the Amazon rainforest to kill a terrorist leader hiding there. The mission wasn't complicated. Before long, the Special Forces team locked onto the target Jack's location. They then aimed and shot him dead. The whole sequence of actions was done in one smooth motion. After killing the target, the Special Forces team didn't linger and immediately proceeded to the predetermined evacuation point. Little did they know, danger had already crept close. Just as they were about to leave, the team leader suddenly realized that the members in charge of rear vigilance had lost contact. He immediately sensed something was wrong. He quickly sent 2 members to scout the hillside. When the 2 arrived at their comrades' vigilance post, they were stunned by the sight before them. The comrades who had been on guard had all been silently killed. This was definitely not something ordinary terrorists could accomplish. The team leader quickly reported to the teammates on the mountaintop by walkie-talkie. His first thought was that they had fallen into a trap, and he suspected the enemy planned to set the mountain on fire, and then ordered the team to evacuate. At this point, an eerie figure suddenly rushed out of the darkness. Though the specific details of the figure couldn't be seen clearly through night vision goggles, it was certain that this was definitely not human. The team members didn't hesitate at all and quickly opened fire, but the figure's speed was incredibly fast, and their number far exceeded what the team had expected. Many team members were killed by these monsters. The remaining Special Forces members fought and retreated. They reached the banks of a turbulent river. Seeing the unknown monsters still chasing them, they had to jump into the river. They were then swept downstream by the swift current. After an unknown amount of time, the team members finally woke up from their unconsciousness. They realized the team leader was nowhere to be found. In the previous attack, they had lost more than half of their comrades. Among the survivors, one comrade was seriously injured. For a moment, a sense of gloom hung over everyone's hearts. But this was clearly not the time to be discouraged. They had to reach the evacuation point dozens of kilometers away. Within the specified time, Sohas, the highest-ranking member among them, became the team's interim commander. After what had happened earlier, they now moved through the jungle with extreme caution, fearing that any sound would attract those terrifying monsters again. They traveled for an unknown length of time, but by then the sun had risen again. They happened to reach a cave. Taking into account the injured comrade's condition, Haas ordered them to get into the cave to rest and recover first. But as soon as they got into the cave, they smelled a strange odor. Pardo, the only female in the team, was so overwhelmed by it that she kept vomiting violently. Haas also frowned deeply. He then asked team member Dia to scout the depths of the cave. Shortly after venturing deep into the cave, Dia saw countless flies buzzing around randomly in the air. This made him have some unpleasant guesses. Dia gripped his flashlight tightly and slowly approached the cave's inner chambers. To his surprise, he came across 2 highly decomposed corpses. He immediately reported the situation to Haas and the others by walkie-talkie. Before long, Haas arrived with 2 other team members. After carefully examining the corpses, he confirmed that these were definitely not human remains, nor those of common rainforest animals. Thinking back to the monster figures that had attacked them earlier, Haas couldn't help but suspect that both corpses were of those terrifying monsters. To uncover the truth, they continued to delve deeper into the cave. After an unknown period of time, Dia and one of the other team members, Ryan, reached a pool of water. It looked like a skylight, but since the water was stagnant, it was difficult to see what was beneath the surface. Ryan, standing nearby, took out a glow stick and threw it into the water to illuminate the area. As the glow stick slowly sank, they were shocked to discover that the bottom of the stagnant pool was covered with all kinds of skeletons and remains. They had wanted to report this to Haas as soon as possible, but for some reason, the walkie-talkie signal malfunctioned. It was intermittent and completely unusable. Just as Dia and Ryan were about to head back to report to Haas in person, they suddenly heard an urgent cry for help through their headsets. The 2 didn't hesitate at all, and quickly turned back along the same path. At the same time, Haas also heard the cry. They reached the cave entrance first. They learned that Pardo was missing. The group searched around, but the cave's branches were far more complex than they had imagined. Not only did they fail to find Pardo, but some team members also got lost in the process. Haas continued to go deeper along one of the branches. Suddenly, he heard rustling sounds coming from a corner. He immediately went on high alert, and carefully scanned his surroundings with the flashlight's beam. He spotted several monsters approaching from the corner. Perhaps realizing they had been discovered, the monsters stopped hiding and suddenly jumped out from the corner. They then pounced at Haas. He quickly fired back in self-defense, but the monsters had incredibly fast reflexes, making it difficult for the bullets to hit them. Moreover, there were a large number of these monsters. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, Haas quickly retreated backward. He happened to meet Dia, who had rushed over upon hearing the gunfire. Dia pulled Haas into a narrow crevice, but to their surprise, the monsters followed them into the crevice. Haas quickly turned his gun around and fired inside the crevice. He managed to kill the monster just before it could grab him. The two then climbed all the way from the crevice to the cave entrance. Most of the team members had gathered there by then. Only 2 others hadn't made it due to various reasons. Haas knew the cave was full of danger, and they couldn't stay there any longer, so he used the walkie-talkie to instruct the remaining 2 team members to head to the evacuation point to regroup. Haas then led the other team members away. Before long, Haas and the others arrived near the evacuation point. Out of caution, he first asked Ryan to climb a nearby tree to keep watch. They would send a distress signal once the plane arrived. Soon after, the rescue helicopter arrived. But before Ryan could send the signal, a rocket suddenly flew out of the dense forest not far away. The helicopter was hit directly and exploded on the spot. Haas and the others were filled with despair when they saw this. At the same time, deep in the earlier cave, female soldier Pardo finally woke up from her unconsciousness, but as soon as she opened her eyes, she was met with a terrifying sight. Pardo reacted quickly, using one hand to hold back the monster's jaw. She then pulled out a dagger with her other hand, and stabbed it into the monster's body. Before long, the monster stopped breathing completely. After standing up, Pardo immediately hid in a corner to avoid any subsequent attacks. Once she was sure no other monsters had detected her, Pardo finally let out a sigh of relief. She also realized the cave wasn't a safe place. She thus hurried toward the cave entrance, hoping to regroup with the other members, but she accidentally slipped and fell. When Pardo got back up, she was once again shocked by the sight before her. Based on their clothing, Pardo inferred that these people were all local miners. Since they had been dead for a long time, the bodies had decomposed. It was impossible to identify the condition of the wounds. Pardo suspected they had all been killed by the monsters. After all, it was unlikely that miners would have such deep hatred with anyone else. She just couldn't understand why the monsters had piled them up here after killing them. Pardo thought as she hurried toward the exit. After an unknown amount of time, she finally saw the sunlight outside again, and she happened to meet 2 other team members. After briefly explaining their respective situations, Pardo set off with the 2 to regroup with Haas and the others. On the other side, Ryan quietly approached the crash site after seeing the plane shot down. He found that the pilot was still alive, but he had been forcibly taken away by a group of mysterious people. In addition, they had taken all the supplies on the plane. Only after the mysterious people had completely left, did Ryan dare to carefully step forward to check the traces they had left behind. He found that apart from a gas mask, all other supplies had been taken by the mysterious people. At the same time, Dia, who was on guard at the perimeter, also noticed something unusual. He hurried back to Haas and the others. He said he had discovered a mysterious cabin. Their current situation urgently required supplies, so Haas took several team members and followed Dia to the cabin. The jungle cabin looked abandoned. Even the door was damaged, but there were several dead monkeys hanging outside the cabin. It seemed that the occupants had left in a great hurry. Haas and the others carefully entered the cabin to check. There were no other useful items except a backpack. Inside the backpack, there were not only food and clothes, but also a mobile phone with no power. This further confirmed to them that the owner had left in a hurry. Shortly after Haas and the others came back, Ryan also rejoined the group. He told the other comrades everything he had just seen. Upon hearing this, Haas and the others suddenly thought of a problem. There was only one rescue helicopter sent to pick them up, but their team had originally had 20 members. One plane could never hold so many people. At this point, a terrible guess arose in his mind. Perhaps the higher-ups had known from the start that they would suffer heavy losses. After all, a 20-person team was completely unnecessary for an ordinary decapitation mission. At this point, a certain answer was on the tip of their tongues. The higher-ups had long known that there was a group of dangerous monsters in the jungle, and they were ostensibly here to carry out a decapitation mission, but in reality, they were just bait. Now it was clear that they had been abandoned by the higher-ups. Thinking of this, anger surged in everyone's hearts, but all their grievances and anger could only be vented on those bastards. After they escaped the rainforest alive, Dia suggested moving to the border immediately, and then finding a chance to contact the base. This might allow them to re-establish contact with the base before their supplies ran out, but Haas firmly rejected this plan. He couldn't abandon his comrades, and planned to wait for Pardo and the others to arrive, before figuring out a way to leave together, and this wait lasted until nightfall. Pardo and the others had gotten lost in the rainforest. Seeing that they hadn't arrived for a long time, Haas and the others guessed that they might have met with those terrifying monsters. Just as he was hesitating and wondering whether to give up waiting, Haas suddenly heard a strange sound not far away. He immediately led the team to approach carefully to check. To their surprise, it turned out to be a woman. Her whole body was covered with white handprint-like paint. Dia immediately knocked her unconscious. Only after confirming that she posed no threat, did they wake her up again. Through conversation, they learned that the woman's name was Anna, and that she had come with her companions. But something unexpected had happened along the way. As for what happened afterward, Anna had no memory at all. Although Haas didn't think the woman was a problem, out of caution, he decided to take her back to the cabin first. This was to avoid exposing their whereabouts. Haas instructed the medic to tie her up, but Anna struggled violently. The already dilapidated cabin couldn't withstand Anna's thrashing at all. As a result, a beam fell from above. The unsuspecting medic was knocked unconscious by the beam on the spot. Anna also quickly broke free and escaped from the cabin, rushing into the dense forest. After a while, the medic finally woke up from his unconsciousness. He told Haas and the others about Anna's escape. The team members hurried to search around, but the rainforest was so vast that finding one person was like looking for a needle in a haystack, and if Anna ran into the terrorists, Haas and the others' whereabouts would surely be exposed. So he resolutely ordered everyone to evacuate the cabin. At this point, Haas saw that the injured team member was still motionless. He reached out and touched his comrade's body with a slight tremor. He realized that the other person had stopped breathing. A wave of sorrow swept over Haas. He couldn't bear the thought of his comrade's body falling into the terrorists' hands and being humiliated, so he used the only grenade he had to set the wooden cabin on fire, cremating his comrade's remains. He never expected that Haas and the others would encounter Anna again in an open area. While evacuating, Haas and the others hurried forward to restrain her, but just then, several searchlights suddenly shone on them. They immediately sensed that something was wrong, but the enemy never showed up. It seemed that there was no one in the factory at all. Full of doubts, Haas and the others decided to get into the factory to investigate. Perhaps they could find out what had happened here. Maybe they could also get supplementary supplies. They got into the factory smoothly without any obstacles along the way. Haas went straight to the factory's cold storage to look for any leftover food, but when he opened the door, a stench of decay hit his nose. Haas frowned deeply and searched the surroundings more cautiously. To his shock, he found more than a dozen human bodies piled up in the corner of the cold storage. Before Haas could figure out why these people had died, here, two figures suddenly rushed out from the corner, but their strength was mediocre. Even with a surprise attack, they were no match for Haas at all. Haas easily restrained the two of them. He noticed that they were both wearing the same uniform, clearly not terrorists. Haas asked them what had happened here. From their answer, he learned that this was actually a construction site. They were both construction workers from an engineering team. Not long ago, they had received a project to build a dam in the Amazon rainforest, but shortly after the engineering team arrived, they were attacked by a group of mysterious people. All of them were wearing hoods, making it impossible to see their faces, but each of them was very powerful, not at all like ordinary humans. Many workers were killed by them. Some survivors were abducted by the mysterious people. Only the two of them had escaped detection by hiding in the gaps of the cold storage. When the two saw Haas walking in, they thought the mysterious people had returned, so they launched a surprise attack on him. Haas asked them how they had entered the rainforest earlier. He learned that the engineering team had their own boat, which was moored not far away by the river. Haas suddenly had an idea. He planned to use the engineering team's boat to lead his team out of the rainforest. Later, under the guidance of the workers, he and Ryan found a moored boat by the river, but when they stepped inside, they couldn't help but frown. The boat was leaking, and judging from the traces around, someone had deliberately sabotaged it. Haas continued to explore the boat. Suddenly, he heard a sound coming from not far away. He held his gun and slowly approached the source of the sound. He found that two baboons were feeding on a human body. When they saw someone approaching, the baboons clearly regarded Haas as new prey, and pounced on him without hesitation. Luckily, Ryan was nearby and quickly shot them dead. Not long after, Haas went back to the construction site. He took out a tattered page from a diary he had found on one of the dead bodies. He asked Anna if she recognized the writing on it. Anna's emotions suddenly became agitated. She recognized that it was exactly her comrade's diary. Seeing these tattered diary pages, Anna finally recalled what had happened to her earlier. Haas then learned that Anna was an anthropologist. She and several other companions had formed an expedition team to search for ancient indigenous tribes deep in the rainforest. During this time, they accidentally learned that there was an indigenous tribe with a thousands-year-old heritage deep in the rainforest. The tribe still maintained the custom of sacrifices. The ruler of the tribe was a high priestess. According to rumors, they could turn humans into super soldiers through ritual magic, possessing all kinds of incredible abilities. After a long investigation, they finally found the trace of this mysterious tribe, but Anna and the others were attacked by them. The whole expedition team was captured. Later, they were taken to a cave, which was exactly the place Haas and his team had discovered earlier. Anna had seen those people performing bloody sacrificial rituals inside. The workers Pardo had seen earlier were killed by the members of the indigenous tribe. Later, based on Anna's description, Haas couldn't help but feel that the tribe's leader sounded familiar. He immediately took out the photo of the assassination target from before. Anna identified him as the tribe's leader right away. Learning that he had been killed by Haas and the others, Anna couldn't help but burst into tears. But Haas didn't let his guard down because of this, because that cave was upstream from the construction site. Perhaps the indigenous tribe would come to take revenge. They had to leave here as soon as possible. Coincidentally, there was a signal tower at the construction site, but it had suffered some damage due to the earlier attack by the indigenous tribe. It needed to be repaired before it could be used normally. Ryan was put in charge of this task. The medic led the others on patrol, repairing the damaged barbed wire caused by the attack. This was to prevent anyone from sneaking into the construction site. Just then, Dia in the monitoring room suddenly noticed movement in the woods. Outside the construction site, he notified Haas and the others right away. Everyone immediately went on high alert, ready for battle at any time. But the people walking out of the woods weren't enemies, but the missing trio of Pardo and her companions. Everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. Haas then took them to the infirmary. Although he was certain they weren't imposters, due to Anna's previous account, Haas still decided to have the medic examine them, only after confirming there were no strange wounds did he allow them to move freely. Later, Pardo told everyone about her experiences during this period. As they were talking, movement was heard again in the woods outside. In the next second, the construction site's searchlights were smashed with stones. Then the roar of a chainsaw came from the woods. A large tree then came crashing down. It hit the barbed wire fence dead on. Haas and the others immediately sensed danger, but it was already too late. Countless masked mysterious figures poured into the construction site, through the gap in the fence. Even though Haas and the others fired wildly to stop them, the masked figures never flinched. They rushed at the team without hesitation. Just like zombies, their bullets gradually ran out, but more and more masked figures kept coming. Everyone had to draw their daggers and fight while retreating. Haas ordered everyone to retreat to the generator room. There was a tunnel hidden there that led directly to the top of the mountain. It could help them escape the masked pursuers, but at this point, another accident happened. Pardo had run out of bullets totally, and was surrounded by several masked figures. Luckily, Pardo was also highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat. She seized the opportunity and twisted the enemy's neck. Curious, she lifted the enemy's mask. To her shock, what appeared was a ferocious and decomposed face. Pardo hastily dropped the enemy and fled. Before long, everyone gathered in the generator room. But just then, a worker suddenly went crazy and attacked them. He roared and tried to stop them from getting into the tunnel. After experiencing all these bizarre events, Dia was already on the verge of a mental breakdown. Now that the worker had suddenly gone crazy, he actually shot and killed him. The others didn't say much. After all, in such bizarre circumstances, they didn't know when they might die. With the worker no longer in the way, they successfully reached the tunnel entrance. But just then, the masked figures smashed through the generator room door and forced their way in. In the nick of time, Ryan volunteered to stay behind to buy them time. The others all rushed into the tunnel. Facing the tide of enemies, Ryan quickly ran out of all his bullets. He was eventually overwhelmed by the masked figures. On the other side, after Haas and the others got into the tunnel, they found that the elevator leading to the top of the mountain could only be operated manually due to years of neglect. But this speed was far too slow. It was impossible to escape the pursuit in time. Dia anxiously turned the control device. Unexpectedly, the elevator cable suddenly snapped. The elevator car immediately plummeted from a great height. Luckily, everyone reacted quickly and wasn't killed on the spot. Haas struggled to climb out of the rubble and called out his comrades' names, but he suddenly heard a scream. He hurried over to check and saw a black figure flash by, and Anna had disappeared along with it. Haas looked solemn. He slowly approached the depths of the tunnel in the direction where the black figure had disappeared. Before long, he unexpectedly found a simple tent made of plastic sheeting. Anna wasn't inside. There were only many strangely shaped windmills. Not long after, the medic and Dia caught up. After hearing Haas's account, they planned to continue investigating deeper, but just then, the surrounding windmills suddenly started to spin. The medic keenly detected something in the air. He immediately told Haas and the other to flee. They had to give up searching for Anna. Since the elevator car was destroyed, they had to climb the elevator shaft. After an unknown amount of time, they finally escaped the underground space, before everyone could catch their breath. Another strange change occurred. Pardo suddenly attacked one of her comrades. She frantically smashed a stone into her comrade's head. Although Haas and the others rushed to stop her immediately, it was already too late. The comrade had stopped breathing. At this point, Pardo was just like a beast. Her eyes were filled only with the desire to kill and bloodlust. Haas and the others had no idea why Pardo had suddenly become like this. At this time, in a military base, an old woman was being escorted to the command room. The old woman suddenly stopped. The soldier behind her impatiently pushed her, urging her to hurry up. At this point, the old woman suddenly reached out and grabbed the soldier's arm. It was a pitch-black claw that could never belong to a human, but the soldier didn't think much of it. After he completed the escort mission, he suddenly developed a high fever. His whole body twitched uncontrollably, accompanied by vomiting and dizziness. In just a few hours, the soldier's eyes turned scarlet and his gaze became dull, just like the legendary zombies. Naturally, this was all the work of that old woman. Her real identity was the high priestess of a certain tribe, but she was discovered by the military due to some accident. They threatened the high priestess with her tribesmen to force her to cooperate. Only then did the military learn that the terrorist leader they had been searching for so long was actually hiding deep in the Amazon rainforest. At this point, the infected soldier wandered dazedly into the base cafeteria, looking at his former comrades in arms. His mind was filled only with the desire to kill and bloodlust. The soldier suddenly raised his gun and pulled the trigger at his comrades. Before long, the cafeteria was completely empty, but the desire to kill in the soldier's heart didn't fade away. Just as he was about to continue his killing spree, the arriving guard shot him dead on the spot. This whole scene was seen by a soldier named Kane. Later, he accidentally caught a glimpse of a mysterious man in a suit, taking several photos of the dead soldier. Kane was filled with doubts. He quietly followed the man, hoping to find out the truth, but due to his injured leg, he couldn't keep up with the mysterious man at all. He was eventually stopped by military police at the staircase. He completely lost sight of the man. Kane decided to report this matter to the person in charge, the colonel. At this time, the colonel was on the phone. When he saw Kane arriving, he only gave him a glance. Kane immediately understood and hid in a corner. Half a minute later, several military police suddenly rushed into the command room and drove the colonel and others away. Because Kane was hiding in the corner, they didn't notice him. After the military police left, Kane walked out of the corner. He looked at the documents the colonel had left behind. He guessed that these were messages the colonel had deliberately left. It was a list of special missions. A rainforest map was also placed next to it. Looking at the familiar names on the list, Kane immediately realized that this was the Special Forces team, sent to the rainforest a few days ago, to carry out the decapitation mission. If it weren't for his sudden leg injury, Kane would have also participated in that mission. Several names on the list were marked with emphasis. Kane didn't know what it meant for the time being. He decided to take the documents first, and then investigate the secrets behind them later. Unexpectedly, just after he hid the documents, the military police came back. Kane was immediately driven out of the command room. Later, he saw several fully armed chemical defense soldiers arrive at the base by helicopter. Kane couldn't help but guess if this was related to the earlier incident in the cafeteria, but no one at the scene could answer his question. But what was certain was that Haas and the others' mission was by no means simple. Kane decided to go warn his comrades, so he secretly climbed over the base's wall and limped into the rainforest. On the other side, the death of their comrade filled them with deep sorrow. Dia, who was already on the verge of collapse, finally couldn't bear the pressure and turned around to flee into the rainforest. Haas and another team member hurried to chase after him. Unexpectedly, they arrived at the village. The two immediately heightened their vigilance but still fell into a trap. Countless villagers holding sharp weapons surrounded them. Two men were no match for the overwhelming number of attackers, and there were also some masked figures among them. Before long, the two were captured and taken to the leader. Haas looked at Jack in shock. They had clearly killed him earlier. Jack said calmly, the person they had killed before was just a double. Later, Haas discovered that Anna was also here. Jack took them to the same cave as before, and tied Haas up with iron chains. Looking at the windmills not far away, Haas had a vague sense of unease. Jack walked up to him leisurely and slowly recounted the whole story. Haas then learned that Jack was actually also a member of the military. His team had received a mission to investigate deep in the rainforest. They accidentally discovered a mysterious virus. Except for Jack, all other members of the team died from it. But when the locals found Jack, they revered him as a god. Later, through further understanding, they learned that this tribe had been using this virus and the blood of monsters to create fearless super soldiers for thousands of years, but all the infected eventually lost their sanity. Only Jack remained unchanged. Those brutal super soldiers would maintain absolute loyalty to him. After learning about this, the military planned to use the virus to create their own super soldiers. Therefore, Jack had to be killed first. Just then, the windmills not far away suddenly started to spin. The mysterious virus drifted over with the wind. Jack hurried out of the cave, leaving Haas struggling desperately. Not long after, Haas and Anna were taken deep into the cave by the masked figures. Then two more masked figures carried a terrifying monster and slowly approached. This was exactly the second step of the transformation ritual, allowing the monster's blood to get into the infected person's body. At the same time, the medic guarding Pardo hadn't waited for Haas's return for a long time, so he chased after them in the direction they had left. At this time, on the other side of the jungle, Kane also arrived here, but in the vast rainforest. Where should he look for Haas and the others? And the main force of the military had also arrived. They were exactly the group of fully armed chemical defense soldiers from before. They used flamethrowers to arbitrarily sweep the rainforest, forcing the indigenous tribe to show themselves. No one knew how all this would eventually end. The film ends here. 1,000 Fangs was released in 2021. The film's theme isn't particularly innovative, but the plot is relatively compact. As a low-budget TV series, it at least meets the passing standard. If you like this type of film, you can watch the original. If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe.